And now, the moment you've all been waiting for and came for, I'd like to introduce someone that I've known for a long time and I have a tremendous amount of admiration and respect for. He's one of the best thinkers I know, and he's not only a great thinker, he's a great communicator in a lot of ways. You know, he's written several books that I've read that have really guided me, and I've heard him speak already too, so I think we're in for a treat. What his topic today is one of his books, one of his many books, as you can see up on the screen, Mission Drift, which applies to both nonprofits and for-profits, I think, so you're going to get a good lesson on how to not let your company drift. We do have these books for sale back here for $10 a piece, so if you'd like to get one, and I'm sure Peter will be around, he might even autograph it for you afterward if you'd like. He's also written, his newest book is Rooting for Rivals, which is another great topic on cooperating with our competitors, not beating each other up. I've also read his book, The Board and the CEO, so that's a great book if you want to understand how to form a board of directors and how to organize that well. So there's a lot of great material that he has. But just on his background, he's president of Hope International, which is a great organization that inspires a lot of entrepreneurs around the world through microfinancing and now helping them manage that money through credit. So it's become a huge organization, and Peter has led that all the way. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce you Peter Greer.
It is a gift to be with all of you this morning, and Mike shared a little bit about some of the benefits of the High Center, but I think you left out the most important one. When I think about my participation here, I can tell you that the number one benefit that I have taken away is the gift of friendships. And how many of you would say something similar, that your participation in what happens, it is not just the content, but it is the relationships. And I love in this room, there is a whole lot of friends that are here as well. So thank you for being here. I am looking forward to this discussion and conversation this morning. But before we dive into that, can you join me in thanking the staff that made the meal and served it for us this morning? Because we all got here early, but they got here a lot earlier, and so they're all gone now, but thank you for that. They were incredible. So I want to give you a little bit of the background of why I have this interest in this particular topic of mission drift. And it started several years ago. I was working with a foundation in Houston, Texas, and the organization was considering what would have been a game-changing proposal for Hope International. We were submitting our documents, we were going through the process, we were following up and following up and following up, and the last step was to travel down to Houston and to present to their board of directors. So literally on a Houston high-rise, top floor, glass windows, we're making this presentation, and it is the final pitch. And as we had this final pitch, I was feeling like it was good. I was feeling excited. And again, the proposal that was in front of them would have been literally just game-changing. It would have been a 7-figure gift to Hope International. And sometimes nonprofits count the zeros after the decimal point. This is 7 figures without the decimal points. This would have been a game changer. They kind of had their deliberation. They came back and they said this. They said, Peter, we love the microfinance model. We love the way that you're investing in entrepreneurs. That fits with who they are. They said, we love the geography. We love the places that you are serving, and it overlaps with our strategic priorities. They said, Peter, the only problem is that we're a publicly traded company, and you keep talking about how important your faith is in this work that you do. You keep talking about not just the alleviation of physical poverty, but the alleviation of spiritual poverty. And they said, because we're a publicly traded company, we can't get alongside that. So they said, promise that you will just not use our funds. Promise us you'll stop talking about that aspect of your mission. Promise us that you will just not focus on that, and then we'll be able to come alongside you. Now, I can tell you, at that moment, I wanted to do anything possible to get to yes in that moment. I don't know how many nonprofits you're involved with, but very few nonprofits wake up every morning saying, I've got too much money, I don't know what to do with it all today. Many of us feel like our missions extend beyond our resources. And yet in that moment, it was an eye-opening experience where they were saying, we like this aspect of who you are, but we're not ready to get alongside the entirety of your mission. So we asked for time. We said, thank you very much. We ended up having time, and we ended up going back to the founding of the organization. We went back to our model. We went back to our mission. We went back to the board of directors. We started doing research, and we started looking at, is it possible to get to yes in this situation? Is it possible? Is there some creative way we can get to yes? And as we looked at our model, as we looked at our mission, as we looked at the work that we believe that we were given to do by the founders and by the original mission and mandate of the organization, we came to a conclusion that in good conscience, we could not say yes to that funds. It would have been asking us to compromise on a core aspect of our identity and our mission. And so we walked away from that particular funding opportunity. But I can tell you, that was the greatest gift that any organization, any foundation has ever given us. Because it gave us an opportunity to say, what is our mission? What is it that's at the very core of who we are? Now, for us, when we took that step back, we said, it is about sharing the hope of Jesus. That is at the core of who we are. And it's about providing jobs. That is at the core. That is who we are. That is inside our inner circle. Those are the things that we hope does not change over time. But the great gift that they gave us was the ability to take a step back and to say, what matters most? And so I want to start this morning by simply having a conversation with you. We're going to do this several times throughout this morning because the goal is not just to present information. The goal is to make this as actionable and as clear as possible this morning. And my hope is that there might be a few concrete takeaways. So the first question that I'd love for you to do, pair and share, just turn to someone right next to you. Imagine that the year is 2050. Imagine that you have the opportunity. You've been gone for a few years. Imagine you have the opportunity to come back to your organization, the organization that you care about so much. And what is it that you hope is still there? What is the core mission that in the year 2050 you hope is still as vibrant then as it is right now? Because this conversation that we're having, I have looked at it originally through the lens of Hope International, but I believe entirely that this has application for any organization that is founded with a mission. Why do we exist? And what is it that you hope would still exist in the year 2050? So just take 3 minutes, pair and share. What is your core mission? What is it that you would hope still remains in the year 2050? Go. All right, let's hear a couple. What are some of the things? The year is 2050, you've come back. What is it that you hope still remains as some of the core elements that you see? Lyndon.
Ours is to create $1 million for missions every year.
Yeah, so $1 million in missions, that there still is that same vibrant commitment to using the business for missions. Great, good. What else?
One of the things that we have at Members by Kathy is Kathy's Circle of Friends, and we sponsor an event bi-weekly for adults with developmental as well as physical disabilities. So it's my desire that Kathy's Circle of Friends is doing that.
Wow, awesome. Yeah, there still is Circle of Friends. Great. What else? What else? Yes?
Transforming entrepreneurial leaders so they can serve others.
Transforming entrepreneurial leaders so they can serve others. Great. That sounds like your mission statement. Yeah, it is. I love the clarity of that. Good. What else? Yes? Community Center for At-Risk Youth. Is that what you're currently doing, or is that what you're involved in supporting? You're currently doing, yes. So Community Center for At-Risk Youth. Great. Great. Awesome. I love the clarity of who the target audience is as well in that. Great. What more? Yes.
I think it's more than just a specific mission, but our mission is in all aspects of life, faith, business, relationship, and the mission is to give more than you get.
Give more than you get. I love it. Great. Give more than you get. Good. What else? Yes.
Creating an extraordinary experience for your clients.
Extraordinary experience for your clients. Great. Excellent. Good. One more.
Help others win, coworkers, customers, and community.
Help others win. Great. You know the interesting thing is that my guess is everyone here, we might not be able to articulate it quite so clearly, but my guess is all of us know that there's something about our work, there's something about our organization, there's something that matters, and we know that if we were to come back in the year 2050, my guess is we'd be able to feel it. Is it still there? Is the core elements that energize you for the work that you do, is it still there? But the interesting piece is that as we started looking at this issue of mission drift, what we found is it was far more difficult to find examples of organizations that over time scaled, professionalized, and kept their core elements. You know what was far easier to find? It was far easier to find examples of egregious drift. It was far easier to find examples where the founding passions, the founding purpose were almost impossible to see or spot. One of the examples that we found was an organization that might surprise you to learn its founding story. But does anyone know who this individual is here? We have some prizes today. I'm allowed to give books out. So any guesses? Who do we have here? Saint somebody. Who said that? That's a good start, but it's not quite enough. Saint somebody. You can kind of say it. Yeah. Saint somebody. Saint John, no.
St. Peter?
Saint Peter, no. Saint Francis, no. We celebrate him every year.
St. Christmas?
Saint Christmas, you're so close. Who's Saint Christmas? No, not Saint Patrick. Who said Saint Nicholas? I heard you, Dan. All right, great. Dan, I didn't even have to throw it. Saint Patrick is not Saint Christmas. So we have this saint, right? And what is Saint Nicholas? What is he known as? Dan, give me the book back. I'm going to make you earn it a little bit more. What is he known as? What's another name, more common name for Saint Nicholas?
Santa Claus.
Okay, you're going to get a book at some point today. I can totally tell on that. Exactly, Santa Claus, right? And how many of you know the story of Saint Nick, this incredible story where he sees a family in need and he gives generously. He is an individual marked by generosity, and as a result, the story of Saint Nicholas, the story of his life has been passed down, and so he has been seen as the patron saint for children's causes, for all kinds of things, and he is most well known as Santa Claus. But did you know that Saint Nicholas is also the patron saint of pawn shops? Now, anyone in marketing? Because whoever was the marketing department for St. Nicholas and choosing Santa Claus to be what he's most well known for instead of the patron saint of pawn shops, that was a good choice for his overall image. But even the image, what do you think this logo, even the logo of pawn shops, what is the connection even between this logo that some have written about and the story of St. Nicholas? That he is in the process of giving these 3 purses to the 3 individuals. Literally, in the logo of pawn shops, it ties back to the story of St. Nicholas. Now, why in the world do pawn shops have a patron saint? What is the story of pawn shops? Did you know that pawn shops were created as an outreach to the poor, to help? They were created by Franciscans. They were created by the church to see that individuals had a need, and then they were able to respond generously. Initially, that meant that they could come and they could pledge some sort of an item. They could have the ability to be in a loving community, and then they'd be able to get their item back. Now, today, how many of you, when you pass a pawn shop, get a warm and fuzzy feeling in your heart, similar to the feeling that you have on Christmas morning? And how many of you think, those people, they are serving people in need? How many of you dream about, someday in my charitable giving, I can't wait to support the ministry of pawn shops as I am doing this? No. They were created as a tool to care for individuals in need. Pope Julius II, in the year 1512, actually has an edict endorsing pawn shops, Montes Pietatis. He endorses them as an effective way for the church to care for those in need. What is in the logo, what is in the story, somehow lost its way. Pawn shops is not the only example of mission drift, of something that starts with a clear mission, something that starts with a clear and compelling purpose. And may I just say, I love what you are about. I love the clarity of mission, but is it possible that over time, is it possible that what matters most to you might be lost over time? Is it possible? And our research in this says this: it will happen. Drift will happen unless you decide to do something about it. It's one of these, in Stephen Covey, important but not urgent issues. It's in a category that says this is really important in the long-term implementation of your mission, but it never feels urgent. It never feels like today this is an issue, because you know your mission, you know what you believe in, you know what matters most, and yet oftentimes it is a story of benign neglect that one day in the future, what is happening might be impossible to feel connected to you. And if you're a founder, what you are all about. So the question is, what causes organizations to drift from their founding purpose and passion? The story of pawn shops is just one of many. What are the factors that contribute to this? How does this drift? How does this slow but steady drift happen? I want to take 3 more minutes. Turn, pair, and share. Let's identify the causes. What is it that causes drift to happen? Go. All right, let's hear, what did you come up with? What did you come up with? What are some of the factors that contribute to drift? And something's happening on this table over here that I just like. I don't know if it's appropriate to share or not, but there is awesome laughter from this table. What are some of the factors, Cor?
Lack of mission focus?
Yeah, lack of mission focus, right. Lack of mission focus. Good. Good. What else? What are some of the factors that contribute to drift?
We said greed, putting profit over purpose.
Yeah, greed and profit over purpose. Yep. Good. Yeah.
Oh, can I give another?
Sure.
Just general growth, bringing in new leadership. That
Yeah.
might not be in alignment or hold the values.
Wow, growth, and then I heard a separate point on succession planning. Yeah, good. Great, good. What else? What else are some of the factors that contribute to drift?
Not having a clearly defined purpose.
Yeah, lack of clearly defined mission, right? It's hard to stay on mission if you don't really know what it is. Good. What else? Yes, Jim.
Our group said inability to say no.
Wow, that's a big one. Yeah, inability to say no. You know, one of my favorite lines from Warren Buffett? He says, your not to-do list is every bit as important as your to-do list. There's something about good things distracting us from the main thing. Good. What else? Yes.
You got to check in on it.
Check in on it. Is there any way to check in? Do we even know? Are we on track or not? Good. What else? Yes.
Discuss the values and history with your employees.
Yeah, is there any way of regular discussion the values and history of the organization? Are the stories being told? Good, good. I was talking with one leader, and his full-time job, he had had a successful career, his full-time job was chief storyteller. And he would just meet with every new employee and say, let me tell you about the founding story. That was his job. He was a chief storyteller. Good. What else? What else causes drift to occur? We can come up. Yes?
Spend an awful lot of time telling our employees what to do and maybe not why to do.
Wow, the difference of why versus what. So good. So good. So good. Yes?
The people or organizations we serve can also.
Yeah, the people or organizations we serve can also lead to drift. People. Good. Good. Yes?
Fear of becoming extinct.
Fear of becoming extinct, right? Yeah. And it's hard, right? Because this is not an argument against change. You don't change and you will be extinct. It's not an argument against change, but there's a difference between change and mission drift. Change that allows you to better accomplish your mission, and drift that leads you away from your mission. So this is not an argument against change, but it's an argument for purposeful change and in a changing world. Good. A couple more. What else? What are the factors that lead to drift? Yeah.
Complexity is you grow bigger and bigger.
Yeah, there's something about size and complexity. Right, good. I was listening to a Masters of CL podcast about the founding story of Instagram, and it was all on simplicity and the benefit of simplicity, especially with scale. Yeah, good, good. What else? What else leads? What are the factors that contribute to organizations to drift from their founding purpose and passion? Complacency. This takes work. This takes work. Yep, good. Good. Yeah.
Market conditions.
Market conditions, absolutely. Yeah, right, absolutely. And when you feel like there aren't enough opportunities, you got to look for other ones. Yes, Stephen.
Change in leadership.
Leadership. Yep, that's a big one. Yeah, good. Good. So, what's that? Success. Was that what I heard? So my guess is you really didn't need me to be here this morning. My guess is if we had just given ourselves a little time and a little space, we could have come up with a list. Why is there so much drift then? If it's easy to identify the causes, if it's easy to identify our mission, why is drift so prevalent? What we just did as a simple experiment took about 20 minutes. It took about 20 minutes to say, here's our mission. This is what I hope would exist in the year 2050. And then we spent a couple minutes saying, these are some of the things that could pull us off mission. So my question is, why is there a prevalence of drift when we started opening our history books, when we started looking at organizations, when we started looking at any sector, we saw examples of drift. Why is that the case? Yes?
It takes so much work.
It just takes work. It takes work. But wouldn't you say that if St. Nicholas had the option of saying it takes work, don't you think he'd say it's worth it on that? It takes work, though. It takes intentionality. And that's why I love the word drift. Because what is drift? How much work does it take to drift? Drift is the path of least resistance. Drift is the course that we follow unless we do the hard work. So as we started looking at this issue, one of the things that we did was to interview leaders that we could find. We followed a similar methodology that Jim Collins used in Good to Great, in that we reached out to sector experts. We reached out to individuals that were seen as leaders in their sector, and we asked the same question to all of them. We said, what are the examples of organizations that have scaled, have been around for more than 50 years, have revenue of over $50 million, have a history of staying on mission? What are those organizations that you look at that you think have stayed on mission? And we looked at the for-profit sector. We looked at the educational sector. We looked at churches. We looked at nonprofits. And then once we found that there were certain names that kept coming up again and again and again, we went and spent time with our leadership teams, and we asked questions of what have you done differently? What do you believe? And then what do you do? And then we found a counterfactual. We found in history books that it wasn't actually that difficult to find other organizations that had a very similar founding story, and we used them as the counter-narrative, as the counterfactual. And we said, what is the difference in these two stories? We were trying to find, are there these regular issues that contribute to drift? And again, this was a very personal research project. My day job is with Hope International, but I love learning, I love researching, and I wanted to figure out in my leadership journey, how can I be faithful in implementing the mission and passing it on to the next generation? What can I do? And what we found was amazing. We found that there are 12 contributing factors to drift that are the big 12. Now today I'm only going to talk about 3 of them. 3 of the factors that we believe are really significant when it comes to drift. And I hope that, again, there might be just 1 or 2 very concrete and practical takeaways for you today. So the first thing that we found, that the organizations that stayed on mission, that had scaled, that had professionalized, that had continued to implement their mission with excellence, the first thing, it's so obvious that no one wrote it as one of the factors. It's so obvious, but it is this: believe drift happens. It's this: believe that drift is real. Believe that if there is not a lack of intentionality, that you will follow the well-worn pattern of mission drift. Now, a couple of years ago, I was with my son, and we were in the beach in New Jersey. And while we were there, we were having an incredible time. The waves were large. We were body surfing. It was one of the most incredible, fun father-son times that I have ever had. We were having a blast playing in the waves. But I have never been filled with more fear or panic than the moment that I saw my son being pulled out to sea, and it was happening fast. He was caught in a riptide, and he was in, and the waves were crashing over me. I could not get to my son, and I felt sheer panic and utter helplessness in a way that I have never felt before or since. He was being dragged out. Thankfully, there was a lifeguard that was there who jumped in the water at another place, was swimming parallel, got my son and got him back to shore. The sense of relief, that lifeguard is one of my heroes, because I literally thought I was losing my son as he was being pulled out. And the thing that struck me on that is the current was there. The current was there. There was real danger. There was real danger that was right next to us. And yet we just had no idea. We had no idea until we were in the drift. And my experience in researching this issue is that drift is there. It is there, but you only realize it after someone is well out in the ocean, after you get to see the consequences of drift. Very rarely do we have eyes to see that there are currents that exist in life, in leadership, in the things that matter most. You don't drift to where you want to be. You never drift to the most important places. That takes work. It takes intentionality, as you shared. It takes hard work. And so the question is, what are the currents? What are the currents, and how do we be aware of them before it's too late? Can I give just a couple more examples? If you don't believe that drift happens, if St. Nicholas or St. Patrick was not enough for you, let me give you a couple more just real high-level stories that might illustrate this point that drift is real, and to show you a little bit of the methodology that we employed. But we heard about these 2 individuals and their foundation staff, and we ended up meeting with them. We're going to give another book away if anyone can tell me who these 2 individuals are. The one on the left, he is known for oil, Sun Oil, Sunoco. J. Howard Pugh. Steve will give you one up here on that. That was too dangerous. Excellent. J. Howard Pugh. And even today you hear about his foundation on NPR, the Pew Charitable Trust, right? An incredible leader, an incredible individual. And the one on the right, famous for breakfast. Not Kellogg? Yeah, Quaker Oats. And who is it, Quaker Oats? Henry Kroll is his name. Two individuals, incredible business leaders, incredible philanthropists, and it's really interesting to look at the parallels in their stories. So J. Howard Pugh, he made his money in oil, Sunoco. He was passionate about abolition. He was an individual that was incredibly generous. If you go to many colleges, Grove City, Fuller, Moody, Gordon Conwell, you will see his name on buildings. He was trying to advance education and was passionate about Christian institutions. And he had an incredible friendship with Billy Graham, and it was actually their friendship that they launched Christianity Today that still exists as a result of their partnership. He was a business leader who understood God had given him incredible wealth, and he wanted to use it to make a difference in his world. An incredible leader. Now look at Henry Kroll. In many ways, it sounds like a similar story. He was also a titan of industry, but it wasn't oil. It was oats, Quaker Mills. He was also passionate about making a difference. He was passionate about eradicating the red light district in his hometown of Chicago. He was exceptionally generous. He was asked one time how much he gave away to charity, and his response was, "I don't even let myself in on that fact." He didn't even know, but biographers have said it was at least 70% of his annual income that he was giving away to causes that he cared passionately about. And he also had a friendship with a well-known individual. It wasn't Billy Graham, but it was a friendship with Dwight Moody, and they were doing incredible things together. So what do we see? We see two individuals with incredible success. We see two individuals that knew their causes, knew what mattered to them, and tenaciously in their lifetime advanced those and made real progress in those areas. They both were exceptionally generous and wanted to make sure that their estates were set up in such a way that there would be a long-term impact on the people and places that they cared most about. And they also had these dynamic friendships with individuals. So it's interesting to ask a question. So where are their estates? Where are their foundations today? They were set up without a sunset clause. They were set up to exist. So where are they today? So Pew Charitable Trust, we can look, and this is well documented, the organizations that he most passionately was trying to create an alternative to are the ones that today are receiving most of his funding. The organizations and universities that he said, that's what I want to have an alternative to, those are the ones that are getting funding today. Literally, biographers have written, and I believe that if he were to know what was happening with his resources today, I think he would have wished that he had never been given it in the first place. I think it is that strong. It is that strong. He was passionate about certain things, and today, there is a very different direction. When Mission Drift came out, there was the head of the Pew Charitable Trust, and anything that we wrote about in the book was publicly available information. There was no naming and shaming. There was none of that. It was only writing about publicly available information and organizations that we thought were very proud of their current identity. And yet, Rebecca Rimmel wrote an article about how they had not drifted from their founding mission, and she said this. She said, Howard was a man of strong convictions, and his successors on our board are following in his tradition by having strong convictions. Now, help me unpack that just a little bit. What's the problem with this argument that it's not mission drift? She says, he had strong convictions. We have strong convictions. What minor point is missing in that argument? What are the convictions? What are the convictions on that? And again, I passionately believe that if he knew what his funds that God had entrusted to him, what they were going to today, he would wish that he had never had them. And for those of you, I know in this room we have some individuals that are incredibly wise business leaders, growing extremely large and profitable enterprises. Imagine the causes that the issues that you just kind of turn your heart, and then imagine that's where your money is going in the future to fund those organizations that you believe are not the ones that are having the greatest impact. Imagine that's where your funds is going. That is what happened to J. Howard Pugh. Alternatively, the Kroll Trust, it's interesting. The priorities of their giving, of their philanthropy, are fully in line with the original intent. You can say, Peter, how do you know that? How do you know that what they're doing today is in line with the original intent? Well, I've been to their office in Colorado Springs, and a couple things that strike me. One is there is a large picture of Henry Kroll in the boardroom. There also is a documentation which is his own words, and he set it up that before they make any allocation decisions, you know what they have to do? They have to read his words on what his primary intent was. He said, this is what we're about. And he set up a structure, knowing that drift happens. He set up a structure to say, I want to make sure that for future generations, that the funds that I have, the way that we distribute our additional grants, I want to make sure they're within these parameters. And I can tell you, there is a level of intentionality and rigor, and they are making sure that what his original intent is being implemented today. What's the difference in these two stories? I would say it just came down to one fact. Henry Kroll knew that drift happens, and so he did something about it. He knew that it was not inevitable for future generations to know his passion, to know his heart, to know his priorities, and so he said, let's do something about it. And he set up a structure so that this would happen. I don't want to ask for hands raised, but my guess is it is the minority of us that have had that level of thought and rigor about making sure that what we are passionate about, that it continues both with our philanthropy as well as with our organizations that we care about so deeply. One more example. This is the founding mission statement of a university. It said this: to be plainly instructed and consider well that the main end of your life and studies is to know God and Jesus Christ. Now, maybe living in Lancaster, we might think that might be Lancaster Bible College. But what is that the founding mission statement of? Harvard University. The founding mission statement of Harvard was very clear that they wanted to educate the whole purpose. They had an end purpose. And again, this isn't saying whether you agree or disagree. The point is simply this, that the founders had a very clear mission in place. And they said, this is why we exist. Now, Harvard is a terrific place. It is doing all kinds of amazing research. It is having an impact on our world. On the diploma, it says this. It says Veritas, and then it says Christo et Ecclesia. Even today, it says truth for the church, and it's woven in to the very statements. If you go to Cambridge, Massachusetts, and you look at what is carved in, etched in stone, you'll see these things that harken back to that original mission. And yet today, it is really hard to connect what is happening today with that original mission statement. Did you know that there was a group of individuals that saw this story of mission drift that was happening at Harvard about 100 years after its founding, and they decided to move south? Do you know where they moved to? New Haven. They didn't make it as far as I'm sure other people would have liked. They moved to New Haven, and what did they found? Yale. They founded Yale, and they said it's not just about Veritas, it's got to be about Lux et Veritas. Their logos, in a very similar way, the way that they were set up, they said, this is why we exist. And yet what happened to Harvard happened to Yale, and the question is, how does this happen? And here's the pattern. Here's the pattern in higher education. Here's the pattern in business. Here's the pattern in philanthropy. Here's the pattern in nonprofits. It's the passions of the first generation become the preferences of the second generation, and they become irrelevant to the third generation. That's the pattern. That's the pattern that happens, and it happens a lot, and it happens fast. So if you buy this, if you buy that it's possible for the things that you care about today to be forgotten by future generations, the question is this: how do we know if it's happening? How do we know if drift is actually happening? What would be signs of mission drift in your organization? So take just one more minute. How would you know? These are examples that we are given the gift of time, and time allows things to, but how do you know when that first current is taking you? How do you know the initial steps? So 3 minutes, turn to a different friend at your table. What would be signs of mission drift? How would you know early stage identification that drift might be happening within your organization? All right, let's hear. What did you come up with? How do you identify the currents? How do you even know if drift is starting to occur? What are the ways that you could identify, is drift even occurring? What are some of the signs that you would see? Yeah.
One of the things we talk about is the fact that it seems as if what one generation accepts or tolerates, the next generation accepts as normal. So if we see things that are being tolerated in our business, but we really know it's not, it doesn't feel right, we should probably nip it in the bud before it moves on any further, because it will become accepted as normal later on.
Interesting. So I hear you say two things. One, what is tolerated becomes accepted, right? And also I heard you talk about this gut feeling. It's something you know, this is not quite right. And instead of ignoring it, having the difficult conversations perhaps to identify, to name, and potentially to address. Good, good. What else? What else would be some early signs of the currents before they're well on the way? Yeah.
Changes in the name of progress.
Wow, changes in the name of progress, right? Instead of what's an alternative? Change not necessarily just in the name of progress, but change in the name of mission. Is it actually these changes allowing us not just to make progress, but to better accomplish our purpose? Right, good. What else? What else? Some of the early signs of drift in your organizations. Turnover, right? Yeah, what's happening there? Yeah. Good, good. Yeah. Someone. All right, great. Turnover times 2. Good. What else? Early signs of drift. Yes. Wow. Yeah. If part of your mission relates in any way to the customer experience, and you start seeing them not caring, not having a positive experience. Good. Good. Yeah. Customer feedback. Great. Yes. Indecisiveness. Say more on that. Yeah, great, 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 great. Yeah, and that might be a sign our mission is cloudy. If we kind of don't know priorities, don't know where we're going, the indecisiveness, yeah, comes in. Good, good, yes. Apathy and disengagement. Good, good. And you can feel that in an organization's culture, can't you? When it's just a job, you lose sight of that founding passion, burning sense of direction that an organization has. Good. What else? Yes? Ability to say no. Yeah. Right. Yep. And we say yes to everything. Yep. Good. Good. Yes?
Reduction in communication.
Yeah. Reduction in communication. So good. Yep. Good. Good. Yes?
Accountability.
Lack of accountability. Yeah. Right. Right. Down accountability. Yep, good. Good. Yes?
Making
Compromises, right. Yeah, good, good. Yes? Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, inability to articulate the mission, right. You know what's an interesting thing? Is to do a simple audit when you get back to your office this afternoon. First 5 people that you meet, if your mission matters to you, first 5 people that you meet, say, hey, what's our mission? What are we all about here? Would you try that today? I want to see 5 people that are going to be willing to do that. First people that they see, what's our mission? All right, yeah, good, good. 3 more. 3 more people that are going to say, I'm going to do this for the first people that I'm going to meet. Yeah, good, good. All right, perfect. Would you send me an email? I'd love to hear how it goes on that. Exactly. Awesome. Awesome. The inability to articulate it. If you can't articulate it, it's going to be really hard to implement it. Good, good. Any others? Any others? Early signs of drift. Yeah, Jim.
Just small word choices, like sometimes you call a company, and instead of them saying Merry Christmas, now they'll say Happy Holidays.
Yeah, and if your mission is, as ours is, kind of being overt of who we are and our identity, words matter in a big way. Good, good. Yeah. Any others? So, yeah.
Time.
Say more on time. What aspect of time?
As time goes, you tend to drift.
Yeah, right, right.
The longer the time is,
That's right.
you don't recalibrate.
That's right.
Drift further and further.
That's right, yeah. And if you have not had a conversation on what are we all about, if you don't have those places to come back and time extends, becomes more and more difficult to stay on mission. So how do I get from this side of the stage to the other side of the stage? I mean, can I jump? Is there one step? No. It's a series of very small steps. And in the same way, all of these things in and of themselves, it's not like you're going to wake up tomorrow and have some egregious diversion from your mission. But the challenge for you as leaders is to say, was that a step? Was that a step? Because it is the small steps, when compounded by time, that will determine your destination. And if there's not that clarity of this is the direction we're going, if you don't have clarity about this is the way that you were going, then you don't know if you're starting to take steps in a very different direction. So do we have clarity? Do we have clarity about the end goal? And then do we have ability to say, these are the small steps that we are taking? And one of the small steps we're going to take is a break in just a couple minutes on that. But let me just introduce this next idea, and then we'll take a break and come back together with hopefully some very concrete and practical application of some of these ideas. But what we found is that organizations that stayed on mission, the second piece, first was what? They believe drift happens. They believe that this is inevitable unless they do nothing to prevent it. The second thing that they had in common consistently was they said, our mission matters, and you've already addressed this. There is clarity, there is communication, there is an element of them codifying what matters to them and what they hope stays in place. I was with David Weekley. He is a very large home builder, the largest private home builder in the United States. I was with him in Houston, and I wasn't just with David. I was with a group of other philanthropists in Houston. And as I was with them, I was starting to do this research. I was interviewing them and talking about this issue of drift, trying to understand what they are doing to prevent it. And these are some of the wisest senior business leaders I know. They are running massive organizations that have scaled multiple states, massive impact around the world, and also very, very generous philanthropists. And I started talking with them about this issue of drift, and I was expecting if anyone was going to have this written down, if anyone was going to have clarity of purpose and intent, it was going to be this group of individuals, because they seem just off the charts in every aspect of intentionality. But none of them had ever written anything down. None of them had anything in terms of the long term, what they hoped their priorities would be. And one of the individuals there said this. He said, I guess I don't really like thinking about the time when I'll be gone. May I suggest that that time will come for all of us? There are a few guarantees in life. That's one of them. That's one of them that we know, and yet it's something that we don't like thinking about. It's something that's uncomfortable, and yet it's something that is going to happen. I hope it doesn't happen for a long time for anyone in this room, but it's going to happen. The individuals that stayed on mission believed in their own mortality. They believed that there actually was a day when they would be no more, and they wanted to be thoughtful, just as thoughtful about what happened while they were here as what happens when they're not here. And oftentimes that starts with an intentionality of just writing something down, guiding and founding documents that say, this is what we're all about. for future generations, this is what we're all about. I have one individual that has written a letter to his successor for the year 2150. He said, this is the year that I want to make sure that my successor, this is for institution of higher education, he wrote a letter, he put it in, and he wants to make sure that this letter is preserved for the future. In a similar way, when Mission Drift came out, there was a call that I got from the YMCA. And that's one of the examples that we look at, looking at their founding story and what they're doing today. And this individual called me and he said, Peter, I want to tell you something. And my heart kind of dropped. I was like, did we get something wrong in the story? Was there something? We did our research. What happened? What did we do wrong? And he said, Peter, we were doing a construction project on our YMCA. So we took down one of the plaster walls and we found the original charter for when we were founded and what we were meant to be. And he said, we read that as a leadership team, and he said, and this is a Southern grown man, and he said, and we wept because we realized we had lost sight of our core mission. There's power in words. There's power in writing something down. There's power in saying, this is what we exist to do. And I imagine how that story would have been different. Instead of just sealing it in a plaster wall, what if it had become a vibrant part of their patterns as an organization? So just one small way. Do you have your founding story? Is it down? Is it told? Is there some way that it's not just written down, but is there some way that when new staff come in, you don't take it for granted? Your story matters. And how many of you are founders of your organization? For you especially, your story matters. And I hope that future generations don't just know the what, but they can see what was it? What was it that caused you to step out? What caused you to step out? What caused you to create, to initiate? And yet for so many of us, we're busy, we take it for granted, and we miss the opportunity to tell the story of this is what we're all about. It's one of the easiest ways to put a small stake in the ground to prevent drift. One of the small ways of simply saying, this is our story. And so last question, and then we're going to go to break, is this. But your founding documents, do you know where they are? And are they living or are they legalese? Have you captured your story? Do you know your story? Do you know your founding passion and purpose? And so when we have our break here, I'd love for that to maybe be the conversation that we come back to after a 15-minute break. But I'd love to hear maybe some creative examples. How have you kept your story at the center of your mission? So we're going to take a 15-minute break, and then I'd love to hear some of the stories or examples that you have of creative ways that you've kept that core position. So 15-minute break. We'll be back at 9:45. All right, I'd love to hear just a couple examples. I would love to hear a couple examples, creative ways that you have taken your founding story, your founding documents, and made them living, made them part of the way that you tell your story for future colleagues, future employees, future board members. Anyone have a couple creative ways that they have been able to capture their founding story, founding documents, and make them living and impacting the current model and operations? Who would like to go first?
Everybody, good morning. Jacob Keeler from Paul Risk Construction. So we're a fourth generation company that has a really awesome story. Paul Risk is the name of DJ's, the current president. He's his grandfather. So I was actually part of a marketing firm that helped to rebrand them a few years ago. And what we did and what we suggested at the time was create a video. So we created this video around the tagline of a legacy built on trust. So in a way, the tagline infuses the mission in there already. And then the logo is a thumbprint that we used and it was like a combination of 3-generation thumbprints that we combined into one. So the story of the brand is the story of the mission, and we show the video to new hires as part of the orientation process to set the tone to begin with.
That is awesome. And I love the use of logo as well. And who else did we hear that from? We heard that from Pete this morning. Right? And even the bridge and the way that it connects to the founding story as well. Awesome. Great example. Thank you. Who else has an interesting way that they've captured their story for future leaders, for future generations? Yes.
So we've taken our vision, values, mission, purpose statements, and thanks to Penn Aaron, Carol, and team, created the vision, values, mission, and purpose statement into a logo in the shape of a house with the various parts as symbols of the house. And the top of it is our vision statement. So, and then our values are the cornerstone or foundation of the house. And that's posted all over the shop so everybody can see it and read it.
Awesome. And is the description of the logo also included in the way that it is around as well? Yeah, awesome, awesome, awesome. Great. These are 3 examples that we've heard this morning about using your mark, using your logo as a way of reinforcing your mission and making sure that's told to future generations. That is fantastic. Excellent. One more, yes.
Thank you for the shout out. I'm Carol with Penn Aaron. We're a 3rd generation. We just celebrated our 50th year last year.
Oh, hi. I'm told I often don't need this. So I'm the CEO. I'm the daughter of the founders. And what we do, we're small. We're 65 full-time associates. So what I do is once the new hires have been with us for just enough time to be thoroughly confused with what they're doing, I call them into my office, and we just sit down and we have a culture talk. Talk about the founding. I talk about where we've been, where we're going. We talk about our mission and just give them the why behind what we do. And I find it's cool on a couple of levels because I get to connect with them personally and I really get to know. We hired 8 people in 2018, which for us is crazy, but I know them and they know us, and it just creates a really cool bond. Plus they understand the history.
What a great example of you prioritizing that with every single employee that you have. That is fantastic to hear. Great. Any more? My guess is we have all kinds of great examples within this room of creative ways that you have done it. May I just suggest that if you are sitting here and thinking, well, I don't know if I have that level of intentionality, I don't know if I have that level of focus on making sure that our mission, our founding documents, our founding story is clear, that might be one really easy way for you to make some progress on preventing drift in your organization. To give yourself time, to give yourself space, to make sure that you are capturing, here's what we're about, this is what we hope exists, and then to make sure that that story is not just in some document hidden on someone's laptop, but it actually is incorporated into the way that you think about your office space, the way that you think about your logo, the way that you think about telling your story to new employees. Those were great, great examples. So we talked about the first 2. We just have one more to go here in terms of preventing drift. The first that we talked about was what? Believe that drift happens. You've been like so participatory. I mean, it's just going to happen. It was going to happen eventually, but well done on that. Exactly. So number 1 was believe that drift happens. Number 2 was clarity. And number 3 is? Yeah, all right. You definitely deserve that book on that. Number 3 is coming up next, and it was this: intentionality of practice. So believe drift happens, believe that this is real, believe that it could happen to us, write it down, document, here's what matters most to us, here is our founding purpose, and then do stuff. That could be the 3rd one. Just do stuff. Make sure that it is connected to the daily rhythms, practices, habits, culture. Make sure that it is not just something that is forgotten about. Make it a living part of your discussion and make it part of your decision making. For the decisions that you make, every decision is an opportunity to take a step to your founding purpose and mission or away from it. It's that simple. Every small decision is an opportunity to reinforce your mission, to reinforce what matters, or to slowly be carried away in a direction that you may not want to go. So what are some of the areas of intentionality of practice? And we identified many of them already. I want to share some of the stories that we found of individuals that either experienced drift or had intentional ways of preventing it. And I want to just give a couple examples when it relates to people, when it relates to metrics, when it relates to funding, and when it relates to the policies and practices that we have in place. After I go through these, I want to open it up and see if this prompts any questions for you, and turn the remaining 15 minutes that we'll have together to see if there are any questions that would be helpful for you to go deeper in. So first of all, when it comes to people, when I think about organizations that would be immune to mission drift, organizations that wouldn't even have to worry about this, I might think about these two characters here. Now, anyone with young kids know who these two characters are?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
What are their names?
Bob and Larry.
Bob and Larry. I love that you even know which one's Bob and which one's Larry. Now, Ben, there is a book for you here. If you can sing the theme song to VeggieTales. Oh, no, this is, I can tell. I can tell we're going to need that right there.
Well, we have a 4-year-old and a 2.5 and 8 months, so it's if you can talk to tomatoes.
That's great. You definitely deserve that. Well done. Well done. So these are two wonderful kind of characters. They have a clear mission. It's to give an alternative to Saturday morning, and they bring the Bible to life for kids. And that was what Phil Vischer's vision was, in a way that was engaging not just for kids, but for parents as well. And they really are. You kind of like watching, I could tell. You've spent a little time watching as well. And so if ever there were an organization that would be immune to drift, it would probably be VeggieTales. Their mission is clear. Every time they make a video, every time they make a story, it seems like they're reinforcing their mission. And yet, Phil Vischer, in what I believe is one of the best business books I've ever read, his book called Me, Myself, and Bob, in this book, he talks about a moment when the organization, he realized we are off mission. And he said there was a company meeting. There was about 400 employees. And these employees are coming together. They're about ready to release a full feature film in the movie theaters. And he stands up and almost in a moment of excitement, talking about the mission of the organization, going back to the founding story, telling why they exist. He said this after giving his rousing speech reinforcing their identity. He said, "That is, at the end of the day, what we are all about." Now, at that moment, if you're giving your company history, if you're giving your passion for why you founded the company, what would you hope happens in the audience at that moment? Maybe like an excitement, maybe a fist pump, maybe an amen, maybe some sort of a celebration. But he talks about how at that moment, the next speaker was not what he was expecting. 2 years ago, he had hired a president to run everything, hiring decisions, mission decisions, everything. He gets up next and says, if that's what this is about, I need to opt out. Now, we got some cultural dynamics going on for a company that is what happens in a public forum when everyone is there, and he's saying this is the passion, and then the president says, nope, that's not what I signed up for. We've got some therapy needed here as well. But the interesting piece is this is not that uncommon. We sometimes make hiring decisions and we miss out on the underlying passion of what the ultimate mission is. Now, what do you think this president had? Why was he hired? Why was he hired? What do you think his resume looked like? Experience. He had an incredible corporate experience. He had a very, very significant list of accomplishments. Yet sometimes, I don't know if you do this, but it's possible to look at a resume, look at someone who's applying for your organization, and assume that just because someone is applying, that they therefore must be in line with your mission. Organizations that stay on mission, they don't take anything for granted. And they know that credentials, as important as they are, experiences, as important as they are, what matters most for the long-term implementation of your mission is whether or not there is that same driving passion for what you're all about. To not be blinded by a resume, that you forget to ask questions of what is most important, alignment of the core purpose and mission. Now, it's not just that. Mission true leaders, organizations that stayed on mission, they actually had a better performance. Harvard Business Review talks about how important this founding generation passion is. And this is one thing they said. Among public companies since 1990, returns to shareholders were 3 times greater at firms where the founder is still part of the management team. We believe that a company's best hope to sustain profitable growth is to stay true to the characteristics that great founding management teams naturally possess. What are they saying in the Harvard Business Review? They're saying that there is no replacement for that founding generation, for the mission, for the passion. And so organizations that stayed on mission, they think about what comes next, and there is a long and intentional process to say, for the next generation, we're going to be very intentional, we're going to be thoughtful, and we're going to stay engaged, even if it's not always doing the same types of things in terms of operational details, but we're going to be the chief mission officer for the next generation. We're going to stay engaged because our DNA, we want to infect the entire organization for good. We want to make sure that there is no ambiguity around what we are all about. And the result, in a for-profit sense, is better return to shareholders. The result for nonprofits is a better ability to fully implement the mission when the founding generation stays engaged. I think about not just when it comes to this issue about returns to shareholders, about staff, but I also see this more than anywhere else in the boardroom. Now, how many of you have a board that you report to? How many of you have been a board member? How many of you is board issues real for you? Yeah, that's a huge number. Lots of you engaged at a board level. My experience in boards is this. There is far less intentionality when it comes to recruiting and onboarding board members than staff members. How many of you would agree with that? And yet, who is ultimately responsible for keeping the organization on mission? It's the board. So why is it that the group that has the most importance in terms of staying on mission actually has the least amount of intentionality? There's a huge disconnect, and I've been on a board, and one of the times that I was on a board, I was on a board, and there was this individual that we were considering as a board member, and this individual was a major philanthropist. This individual had a great set of connections, a great resume, and so this individual, we were talking, and it was like, it was a moonshot, the idea that this individual would say yes to a board invitation. And so one of the individuals said, well, let's just ask. And so he went, met with the individual, and sure enough, this individual, we'll call him Jim, that Jim said, yes, I would love to be part of your board. Went back to the board, had this board meeting, and there was such excitement. Like, can you believe that this individual is going to be willing to join our board? And then one of the individuals asked a question. It was, but how do we know if there's like alignment in the full mission of the organization? And said, well, they give to us? Of course. When you take things for granted, you go off mission. When you take things for granted and don't do that second level of research and investigation, you go off mission. Went back to Jim and found out there was a misalignment in terms of overall direction, in terms of alignment with the overall mission, and so went back to the board meeting. Now, what happens in that next board meeting? When someone has already been approached, someone has already expressed an interest, someone has already said, I'd be interested. What happens in that board meeting when you realize there is a misalignment in mission? What happens next? What happens? They hire them anyway. They bring them on the board anyway. 95+%, that's exactly what happens. When it comes to a board of directors, I believe you have a margin of error of 0. You cannot have any board members that are misaligned with your mission, or you will go off mission. And yet in that situation, the idea is we couldn't possibly offend that individual. They already think they're going to be invited. They already expect that an invitation is coming. We can't possibly offend them, and we'll win them over time. We'll win them over to the full mission over time. And my experience is that this is one of the leading causes of mission drift. It's lack of good practices when it comes to recruiting next generation board members. It is so important. So one practical takeaway, if you are on a board and if you have a process that is a vetting process that does not give you multiple ways up front to explore mission, you are probably going to drift over time. The organization that I'm with now, we actually have a multi-year recruitment process where we get to know individuals before they ever know that there's any possibility of a board role. And that is one small way that we make sure that when an individual comes on the board, that we are certain, not we think, but we are certain that there is a driving passion for the full and complete mission of the organization. So it's not just about staff. It's about board. It's not just about board, it's also about becoming obsessed with succession planning. How many of you remember the 2008 Beijing Olympics? Now, there was a moment, it was a striking moment because the men's and women's relay team did not do as well as everyone was expecting. And this picture shows why. What's the problem in this picture? What's the problem in this picture? This is not where you want the baton, there or there. There's a big, and can you see, like, there is earnestness, there is excitement, there is drive, and there is dread and oh no in the faces behind them. They realized that what did they do? They didn't pass the baton on well. They dropped it. And as a result, they didn't medal. They didn't make it to the next round. And yet I think that this is, in a similar way, this is the ultimate measure of your success as a leader. How well did you do the handoff? How well did you do the handoff to the next generation? Organizations that stayed on mission, they were passionate about succession planning. Succession planning kind of lit them up. One small change that I implemented after doing this research is every January, I give the board of directors a list of 5 names of people that I believe would be great leaders of Hope International. And I'm actively getting to make sure they know the organization or investing in them if they're internal candidates. And I think that is going to be the ultimate measure of success. When you leave, and you will leave at some point, I think you should ask for your final performance review 2 years after you're no longer in your role. And I would submit to you that's your most important performance appraisal you will ever have to judge the effectiveness of your leadership. You can lead great when you're there. What happens when you're not there? That is the ultimate measure of success. So I literally have my last performance appraisal. It's going to happen 2 years after I have left the organization. And I fully believe that's the most important moment. So it's about passing on to the next generation. So it's about people. It's about being intentional for every layer of the organization, making hiring decisions, making board decisions with the mission at the center. It's also about the metrics that we use. I love the Drucker quote, you get what you measure, right? And so the question is, what are we measuring? And just when I think about this within my own story, there was a time when I was thrilled about growth. It was shortly after I joined Hope International. We were expanding into some really challenging environments around the world, and we actually were honored by the World Bank. I got to go down to Washington, D.C. They gave us an innovation award, a Pro-Poor Innovation Award, and I got to give a talk. I got to give a talk about doing microfinance and economic development in post-conflict settings, and I showed them this graph. And as if this graph were the measure of our success. Said, look at the number of people we're helping. This is a tough environment. This is a difficult context. And look at this growth. Now, not everything that goes up continues to go up. I didn't realize at the time, but there was not an underlying quality of implementation. There was not an ultimate fulfillment of mission. And what went up went down in one of the most painful leadership lessons I've ever experienced in my life. I had to go to donors that invested and said, what we thought was going to happen has not happened. We had to lay off 100 staff members. We had to go through a painful course correction. And why was it? Why was it? It's because I was measuring something that, while good, is not actually what is most important for long-term health. Subsequent to that, we've changed the way that we think about metrics. We talk about our mission of remaining Christ-centered. We measure that in everything that we do. We talk about our quality. Are we actually implementing with excellence? And then, of course, we want to serve more people. Of course, we want to grow. Of course, we want to do more. We believe in what we're doing. But it's always third. We always talk about mission. Are we staying on mission of who we are supposed to be? Are we doing our work with excellence? And then we'll talk about growth, but always in those three orders. And so just one more time for you to turn to your table. What matters most with your metrics? If I were to go into your organization and I were to get a group of individuals and say, what does leadership actually value? What do they value most? What are the leading indicators? What matters most? And then the second question, how are those metrics reinforcing your mission? Is there a connection between what you measure and what you celebrate and what you actually spend your time counting? So 3 minutes, turn to someone at your table, be honest. What matters most in your metrics? What has the most visibility? What do you celebrate most? And then what is that doing to either reinforce, bring you towards your mission, or away from your mission? So 3 minutes. All right, let's come back together. I'd love to hear some of the things that you measure. What matters most? How do you measure that? And what's the impact of those measurements on your long-term ability to implement your mission? What are some of the things that you measure? What matters most in your organization? Who'd like to go first? Yeah.
So we have responsiveness in our business is very important because we do generators. So we have a 15-minute callback guarantee. Your service is free.
Wow. Yeah.
We're at 3.68 minutes as of this morning. That's because everybody sees it.
Right. Right.
If you want to test it, come see me. I'll give you a free bologna just for doing it after hours. We're from Lovedown, you know?
Yeah. You just offered free bologna to a lot of people here, Lyndon, on that. That's incredible. So your average response time is 3 point what? 3.68. So the average callback right now, 3.68 minutes. And what does that do? You are measuring that. There's visibility to do that. What does that do to your company?
Well, it's one of our greatest value propositions.
Yeah.
Because you go to your,
Right.
Your vendors want to do business with you because you're responsive.
Right.
Your customers, and also your potential customers.
Right.
Believe it.
Right.
They test it.
Right. And that reinforces your ability to be customer focused, and that's your value proposition. I love it. That's great. Yeah, great example. Yeah, what else?
Customer satisfaction, I guess it kind of builds off of
Yeah. For many, it's just the Net Promoter Score. That's customer satisfaction. What is the experience? Keep you focused on customers. Good. What else? What else do you measure?
Ours is ticket sales for guests. We can't bring the Bible to life if we don't have guests.
Yeah, right. How many people are actually going to Sight and Sound? Yeah. Now, we offer a free bologna. Are there any offers of anything free? Just wondering on that. Great. Good, yes.
We've been working with the company to help measure our culture, just
Huh.
to see how we're doing over time in key performance culturally indicators as well.
Yeah, interesting. That's a hard one to measure, and yet so important. So what are the ways to engage with culture? Yeah, good. What else? Yeah, Roger. Oh. Yes.
I was going to say repeat and referral customers.
Right. Yeah. Repeat and referral, right. Now, interesting, when I think about my job, I can tell you I'm a little bit different, that I'm in the nonprofit space, and I know most individuals here are coming at it from a different perspective. But if I were to ask most nonprofit leaders what they can measure, and actually as I get together with my High Center group, as we meet, we look at some big pieces of revenue. How much is coming in donations? For the nonprofit space, we look at percent to program. How well are we doing? And then we also measure over time kind of other growth indicators. So the size of our budget, the number of people that we're serving, and percent to program. Those are all good and important things, aren't they? Those are good, important things. What's missing in those top 3 indicators? How about any indication of whether we're actually providing a good service to the people that we are serving? My experience is that there oftentimes are good things that we measure, but an underlying absence of saying, is there a connection between our metrics and our mission? Not saying we don't measure all of these other important things, but have you ever looked at your metrics in light of your mission? Have you ever looked and said, is there anything that we measure? Is there anything that we measure that would actually let us know if we are providing a great job? And I've erased it right now, but you know the interesting thing is my guess, we could look at revenue, we could look at lead generate, we could look at all kinds. When I heard your original missions of your organizations, when I heard what the driving issue for many of you about why you founded or why you lead, there is a disconnect between this list and the first list that you provided. Do you see that? And so it might be helpful as one more concrete, actionable takeaway to simply say, when we look at our mission, when we look at why we exactly exist, it's not saying that we don't have the 15-minute callback. But if you said your goal is $1 million to give away to missions, is that actually visible to the organization? Is there actually something that is regularly being monitored? Is there something that we're doing to reinforce our mission in the way that we talk about metrics? So something to perhaps think about, is there a connection between our mission and our metrics? So we started about intentionality. We started about talking about intentionality when it comes to people and board. We talked about intentionality when it comes to metrics. Third area is intentionality when it comes to policies. Now, the John Templeton Foundation is a really interesting example of this, in that I have a friend who works for them, and he told me that they are right now going through a mission drift audit, which I thought was fascinating. But Sir John Templeton understood that drift happens, and he created a structure that every 5 years there was an independent group, and he set very specific parameters of how they were to be selected, that would come in and they would audit the John Templeton Foundation and would ask questions about, are they actually staying on mission to what he articulated as what matters most? He put some teeth in that. If they don't pass the audit, you want to know what happens? Everyone's fired. He set it up that everyone is fired if they don't pass this audit. The board is fired. The staff leadership is fired if they're not faithfully implementing the mission. Now, my guess is that might be a little extreme, but you know what? Guess how serious they are about staying on mission? They want to stay on mission because they want to keep their job on that. There is a rigor, there is an intentionality. And yet, for many individuals, it's about a financial audit without ever going through any sort of a mission audit. Now, isn't that ironic that every organization has a financial audit, and yet how often have you heard of an organization doing something like that? Of saying, we care enough about our mission that we're going to have an external group that's going to come in and they're going to tell us whether or not we're staying on mission. One kind of practical, concrete way that we've tried to implement this is for our global team and partners, we have a structure similar to John Templeton, but that every 4 years, every program around the world has to go through an audit, and it's not that complicated. It looks at clarity of mission and identifies on a scale some questions about how clear are we on our mission. And then we look at intentionality of practice. And we have a survey that we go through. We have a group. It's a great staff professional way that we look at this. And we score our programs and see how likely are they to drift. It's a really simple way, but there's intentionality saying we want to set up a structure so that there are periods of time to not just say, are we doing good? Are we profitable? But are we actually implementing the mission that we believe is the core reason why we exist as an organization? And so it's a simple survey that we go through, and it allows us to have a time to have that intentionality. So we talked about staff. We talked about metrics. We talked about policies. And the last is about funding. Your investors matter, and they matter a lot. The story that I opened with about Houston, I believe that that would have been a step in the wrong direction if we had received those funds, because they came with strings attached. So the question is, how can we make sure that the alignment of our mission is with the way in which we are sourcing our funding? An interesting example of this is Carnegie. Carnegie made his money in what? Steel, exactly. Massive, massive gift. And one of the things that he did is he provided a fund, $10 million, for aged university and technical school teachers. He was passionate about making sure that teachers were provided for in their retirement. And he was so thoughtful, and I love his intentionality. And he said as part of that no condition of race, sex, creed, or color, but sectarian and state institutions are barred. And that is fantastic. That is making sure that it is intentionality about who accesses this funding. Biographers have written about Andrew Carnegie, though, and have said that he didn't realize the impact of one word, including sectarian institutions, as barred. What happened next? Biographers say that he had no idea what he was starting, but he caused the greatest turn away in higher education from founding identity and mission. Because any institution that had any sort of a formal connection to any sort of another group in their governance structure, any sort of a connection to a history, a story, an identity that went back, anyone that had that sort of a formal affiliation was not allowed to access these funds. And so I can just imagine the boardroom conversations. It's we can access this money if only. What happened, if you read Dimming of the Light, a great biography that talks about this, was the number of organizations that walked away from their founding identity for this access to money. It happened, and it happened fast, and it happened furious around the turn of the 1900s. And so one word, and one $10 million gift had a dramatic impact on higher education. So funding matters. And so the question is, where's our funding coming from, and how do we make sure that it is reinforcing our mission? I think about one of the supporters of the organization that I work with, and we sent out a video, and I was talking, it was an end-of-year video. I was trying to say thank you to our supporters and our friends, and it was instantaneous. Press the send button, and 3 minutes later, I get a phone call, and it's Greg. And Greg says, Peter, I got your video, and I thought it was pretty good. I was excited to hear his feedback. And he said, Peter, you missed the core mission. We don't fund Hope International just for the growth. We fund it for the impact and the full mission that you have as an organization, the physical and the spiritual approach. And he said, you missed out what matters most. And in love, he said, Peter, if you ever do that again, we're not going to ever fund you again. Now, that might be a little bit extreme, and yet how many of us understand our influence? Our influence of the places that we invest, understanding the influences of the capital, understanding the influence of our donations. We have an opportunity to help organizations stay on mission. And I believe that Greg, he understood drift. And he was saying, I'm going to do my job to make sure that doesn't happen. So the question, last question, and then we'll open it up to Q&A here. But I want to just, last one at your table. What practices do you have in place to stay true to your mission? And then related, what is one thing that you could do coming at it today to help your organization or the organizations that you care about most stay on mission? So last, love to have a conversation at your table. So now what? What could you do to stay on mission, to help make sure that the organizations you care about most don't follow this pattern of drift? Concrete, practical, take 3 minutes, share at your table. What can you do to stay on mission? All right, let's get a couple up here. What are some of the things, what are we going to do to remain mission true? What will we do? Yes, Zach. Can you hear Zach in the back?
Not be afraid to fire customers.
Wow. Wow, not be afraid to fire customers. Yeah, great. And have you had to do this?
I have. I mean,
Yeah.
Because when they're demeaning or
Wow.
communicate not well with me, more than likely they're going to treat my employees that are coming to do the job
Wow.
even worse.
That
And
sends,
that's not
yeah.
that's not going to happen.
That sends a powerful message to your team that you're willing to stand up for them. That's great. Thank you, Zach. Good. What else? What else are we going to do to remain on mission? I would love to feel like today was a great use of time. Help me out here on that. What are we going to do? Yes. Oh, awesome, awesome, awesome. What's our why moment? That's great. You do that every week? Ah, I love that. Awesome. In a stand-up meeting. Awesome. Yes. Yes.
I have a picture from what you're speaking of. I think many of us might have come in, and I know I did, as we set out mission as guardrails.
Interesting.
But today, mission needs to be, that mindset needs to be shifted from guardrails to goal.
Wow. Wow, you should write a sequel. Wow, that's good. Guardrails versus the goal. That is so good. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Yeah, the other one is how much can we wander and still be in the general ballpark, as opposed to that's the North Star. That's where we're going. That is a great point. Awesome. What else? Yes? Awesome. A mission metric. Great. What else? Yes.
Just assuring that all leadership, whether it's the executive team or the supervisors, are all bought in and passionate.
Great. Great, great. Leadership buy-in. Yeah, great. And may none of you have the moment that you give the passionate talk of the organization, and then if that's what this is about, I need to opt out as the next phrase. Yeah, good, good, good. Yeah, what else? What else can we do? What else can we do to stay on mission for the organizations that we care about most? Yes?
So we're also incorporating our mission and values into our review process. So
Wow.
performance evaluation.
Yeah, including it in our performance review process. Awesome. Great, great. You get what you measure, right? And if you start measuring, that's going to increase the probability that it will happen. Good. Anything else that we are going to do as a result? Because here's my premise. My premise in looking at this, in talking to so many organizations, in thinking about this issue for multiple years, it's the accumulation of small steps. And so every day, as you go back to the work that you have, you are going to have the ability to either help the organization stay on its path, following its true north, or are going to be taking small steps that you might not even realize, when compounded by time, are going to lead to a very different place. And you're going to be another case study in the sequel story that's going to be written here. We're going to have the opportunity every day. Are our small decisions keeping us on the mission? Are they focusing us on what matters most? So that's my hope, is that you would be known as mission true leaders that know where you're going and tenaciously pursue it. So we have 15 minutes to ask a few final questions, if that prompts any. And I still have a few books that I haven't given away yet. So first, 4 people that ask any questions are going to get a gift on that. So yes, Brian.
So you mentioned boards as being non-negotiable, has
Right.
to be aligned with the mission. A lot of us who have small businesses don't have a board.
Right.
We've got a leadership team.
Right.
Would you also say that the 100% non-negotiable leadership team has to be on board?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's whoever the champions whoever are the ones that are ultimately responsible for the mission. If that group is not dead set on being unified in what that mission is and believing that it matters, believing that it's important, you're going to have a disconnect, and it's going to be really hard to have a house divided at a leadership level.
So is there any way to do,
Yeah.
How do we find out if they are on board with that mission in a standard interview process?
Yeah, well, I love the incorporation of issues around mission and purpose and values in the performance appraisal process. Make sure that they are also not just part of the appraisal process, but part of the selection process on that. It's possible to know these things, but the question is, are you giving time and space to look for them? My job, I still am involved in every single senior leader hiring position around the world and every single hiring decision in the US, and that's my only job. My only job, after we know they will technically do the job, my only job is to say, do they have that driving passion for the mission of the organization? And so it's possible in a short amount of time to not maybe fully know that, but to ask questions that will give you a better indication. Are they all in for what the core purpose is? Yeah. I'm just not going to throw that. Sorry. Oh, I'm not going to go there. I'm going to throw it there. Thanks, Brian. Next one, yes.
Can you explain the mistake you guys had made, or Hope had made a few years back when you had the growth and then the drop off? What caused that? Was it your overhead cost? What was the reason for the drop off?
Yeah. Ready? Yeah, so what caused the growth and fall? I wanted to go quickly through that because I don't like talking about it on that. So thanks for bringing that up again in front of a group of friends on that. And just to be clear, that wasn't Hope International overall. That was one program in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So we're okay. Thanks for your support on that. But in that particular instance, there were a couple things. One is that our only driving metric was growth. It was how many people did we add this month. What we were not asking is, do we actually have staff that can implement this level of growth? Do we actually have systems that can implement this growth? The experience to the clients that we serve, so we make small investments. It's possible to make a lot of investments in entrepreneurs around the world. It's more difficult to get that money back on that. And so we were growing, we were raising capital, we're investing capital, but without the underlying quality, without the same procedures, without the group formation, without the accountability structures in place. And so it was growth without quality. And also it was growth without actually saying, and why are we doing this? How are we implementing our full mission? How are we connecting with the church? How are we implementing the model? It relates to how much time we're investing, not just in the financial capital, but in the relationships. And it was all about just a machine that was actually not built on a solid foundation. So those were some of the issues. Growth, may you all have slow and steady growth over your lifetime. My experience is that doesn't always happen, but it's in those high growth modes that issues of quality and issues of underlying mission become even more important to know. Yeah, thanks, Corey. Yes?
In your research, did you ever have any stories of companies that were drifting and came back on course?
Oh, that was the most fun part of our research because it really showed us that there is no organization that is fully off mission. They're in every group that seems like there were some, or every sector there were stories of courageous leadership. I can tell you it's a whole lot easier not to drift, though, than to try to come back to an underlying mission. But yeah, there were several stories that we had, and I mentioned the YMCA. In that particular case, when you look at the founding documents, it was not just a health club. They were also addressing the whole person, including the spiritual aspect. That's why it's the YMCA, Young Men's Christian Association. And so there's a group of individuals, and that was what the person who called me said. He said, there's a group of us, and we're calling ourselves the C Project. And we're just trying to be more intentional about how we can also, as part of our programmatic offerings, also make sure that our faith is something that also is part of our mission. And so even in that instance, there was a group of people that were trying to say, let's come back to this bigger picture of who we are and what we're all about. So I would encourage you, don't drift. It's a whole lot more difficult to come back, but in every sector, there are individuals that are making courageous decisions, and we have so many. If I were to do a sequel, and I'm not, but I would love to tell those stories of drift was starting to happen. But then there was a group of people with clear conviction, with strong backs, that were willing to stand up and say, let's get back to our primary purpose. And those were stories that we love to celebrate as well. Yeah, thanks.
Oh, wait, no, you can give us.
Oh, we got a mic here.
Poor woman brought me the mic.
And then that one here, and Mike has a book down here. I'm going to give his book away too, because I saw you as well. I'll reimburse this, Mike. Yes.
So this woman gave me a mic, and anyone who knows me knows I don't really need a mic. But my question goes back similar to when you were talking about the Congo incident that you had. What happens when you have an organization whose mission involves growth, is return on investment on shareholders, and is structurally, and so the board decides we want to ramp up our mission. We're all, we're focused, we want to increase this, and the end result is, from a operational standpoint, we're going to grow 23% in a year because our mission is to service more people, provide more value or whatever to a larger group of people. And so their mission, in order to fulfill their mission to the nth degree, is to look at, our focus for this year is we want a 23% growth, and operationally, in order to do that, based on what this organization does, will not long-term, in order to grow at that level, the quality of growth is not there. So you bring a lot of garbage with you. So people that are in the operation know this isn't going to work long-term. How do you convince a board or an organization that, look, this is wonderful, we are focused on our mission, but in order to attain it at that level will not produce you a quality long-term effect?
Yeah, that's a great question. And just to be clear, I love growth. I love return on investment, and that is a good thing. But I think an interesting question is time horizon, right? And looking at time horizon and saying, if it is this year, what is going to be the long-term effect on the organization and on our reputation, on our mission, on our ability to implement services. And again, if you want that 23%, we can get it, but here's what it might mean as a result, and having the space for those conversations to happen. So I don't think there's an easy answer to that. I would hire my friends here at North Group and have them help with that, of calibrating how do we have long-term growth with underlying quality, with underlying mission, because my guess is that's a really important conversation that is difficult to have. Anyone have an idea of that? How do you balance that long-term growth within,
I think that's the problem with coming up with a mission that's single-pointed.
Huh.
I mean, I look at a business as holistic.
Yes.
It's growth of the ROI. It's taking care of all the stakeholders in a company, your employees, your suppliers, and so forth. So a single point mission has a tendency to lend more towards drift. When you holistically put it together and say, my mission is to have a healthy organization, and that means not taking junk jobs. It means that means taking care of your people, all the stakeholders in a company. So I think you automatically get into that situation when you have a single point mission. I look at holistically looking at missions that look at the health of the whole body. I mean, if your blood pressure's way down and your brain doesn't work, you don't function holistically. So my point is a business is like a body. It's holistic. It all has to be healthy as a whole.
Right. That's well said.
Single point.
Well said. Well said. Well said. And again, just the one example that we touched on briefly in my experience, it was, here's our mission. This is what we're going to talk about. This is what we're going to measure. Then we're going to go to quality, because if we don't have quality, more growth means a bigger problem for someone else to clean up, right? It's that simple. And then we're going to talk about growth. So it's not saying we don't care about that, but we care them sequentially. For us, mission matters. Are we on mission? Are we doing it with excellence? And then, and only then, are we growing? And we do have some ambitious growth goals on that. So making sure that they're in the order, in that balanced, holistic view. I love that point. Thank you. Last question. And then Mike, I think it was over here. Yeah.
would you comment on the concept of mission change versus mission drift? And would either be okay in your opinion?
Yeah.
Or any differentiation between the two?
Jason, you ready?
Wow.
That's it. That was right there. That was Tom Brady right there. All right. So, sorry. I'm from New England. I just lost all credibility with all of you, but go Pats. I'm sorry. All right, back to the point. I don't even know what we're talking about. Thanks, Marlon. A couple things on that mission change versus mission drift. Again, when we wrote the book, I had a friend. And it really is fun. I look at the map of the United States, and there's like one state that's cheering for Patriots, but I'm just from that state, so sorry. But when I think about mission drift versus mission change, there was an individual that reached out to us right when the book came out, and he said, Peter, he was angry because he worked for an organization. He reported to a board, and he said, I know what's going to happen. He said, anytime I bring up a new initiative, they're going to raise the mission drift flag, and it's going to be an argument against any change. And so he was literally angry that we were writing this book because he felt that the board was still stuck in the past, that the board was not making some adaptations. And I think about Wells Fargo as an example. What is the logo of Wells Fargo? Now, why is the logo of Wells Fargo a stagecoach? Because they started as a stagecoach company. That was actually how they started. Now, in Lancaster County, there might still be a business for them on that. I don't know. But it's not a great business to be in as transportation has changed. But they early on defined that their mission was actually not the stagecoach. That was the means. Their underlying mission was saying, we exist to transport what matters most to people. They said, we are about protecting what matters most. And yeah, we use stagecoaches, but that's not our mission. Many organizations went out of business because they defined their mission as their means instead of their mission as their mission. And so, Marlon, I think that organizations should have a very small number of things that are in the do not touch category. That organizations that stay on mission, it's like there are 3 issues, and that's part of the reason why we wanted to start today by saying the year is 2150. You get to come back. What do you hope is there? You're going to have all kinds of different technology. The world is going to be so different at that point. But we hope these 3 to 5 things are going to be there, and everything else, all of this stuff around here, we're going to be open-handed with it. And I think that's the great challenge for all of us, is to start out, and it's what we did today, to start out with what are those small number of things that matter most. And then, ironically, you can be open-handed with everything else. If you have clarity on the core, everything else is this going to help us implement our mission or not? So we don't want to be in the stagecoach business. We want to be in helping people transport what matters most to them. That's a good business to be in. So may you all know the difference between what is in the center and what are the means that we use to accomplish. And I sure hope that this very special community of people, business leaders, and I love the way that the High Center is investing in this community. I sure hope you have incredible success, you have incredible growth, and for future generations, they stay on the mission that you believe matters most. Thank you so much for allowing me to be with you.